lot of fun things today. We saw Tom Brady advance to his 10th Super Bowl. Does this guy just keep blowing you away? 43 years old. He's still playing at such a high level. We saw that touchdown at the end of the first half that, it didn't seal the deal as the Packers would still have that one, those couple of drives to get themselves back into the game. But 21-10 at the half was a nice little cherry on top. How do you, are you still just marveling at Tom Brady? Cause I know I am.
I think there's a little bit of both. I mean, on the one hand, you have to marvel at 43 years old, 10th Super Bowl, opportunity to win his 7th. I mean, the fact that the Bucs weren't even in the playoffs since 2007, they go back in his first year. He goes to the Super Bowl in his first year outside of New England. I mean, the debate of Bill Belichick versus Tom Brady, who's most responsible for that dynasty, this has an incredible chapter to it. That said, I mean, the GOAT should have been the GOAT in a loss in this game, right? I mean, he threw 3 straight interceptions in the second half. I mean, I don't know exactly what the stats would be going back, but I can't imagine there's many QBs in the history of the league who have thrown interceptions on 3 straight possessions and still won the game. I think he can thank Jason Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett for that. And really, he can thank Matt LaFleur and Mike Pettin for that. I mean, that was a great throw he made at the end of the first half to Scotty Miller there. But that is just coaching malpractice by Mike Pettin calling a cover one robber there. It looks like a single high safety, leaving 2 linebackers down, not really doing anything in the play. And then LaFleur kicking that field goal on 4th and 8. I mean, Rodgers maybe could run for that touchdown on 3rd, and that's his mistake. But I thought taking the ball out of one of the best quarterbacks of all time's hands and kicking a field goal there and giving it back to Tom Brady with about 2 minutes left in the game. I mean, you don't think Tom Brady, even though he's had a bad second half, isn't going to keep the ball, run the clock out, and you're going to lose if you kick that field goal. So I guess what my answer to that would be, Brady definitely deserves his due, but he certainly didn't play well enough to win this game, but he got some help. That's my feeling.
Yeah, he definitely got some help, no doubt about it. As just like you said, I mean, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 280 yards. It's a bit of an up and down line, but yeah, he definitely got some help today as the defense stepped it up. And I could not believe personally that they kicked that field goal on 4th and goal there. I thought they were gonna leave the ball in Rodgers' hands, but they still had 3 timeouts. Like, I understand what he was thinking about, but I think he just kind of overthought it just a little bit much.
Yeah, I think the overthinking part of it is sometimes, and listen, especially, well, he's been in the NFC title game before as a coach, but sometimes you overthink it in the moment and your nerves get to you. But if you sit back in July and you say, hey, if we're in the NFC title game with 1 down inside the 10 to possibly tie the game with a chance to go to the Super Bowl, are we going to kick a field goal or should we give Aaron Rodgers one more crack at it? So, in July, you say, well, of course we're going for it. I mean, our quarterback's Aaron Rodgers. So why is the decision different in the moment? Why does everything get tighter when you're up against it there? I think considering everything, considering who you have on the other side too, the coaching part of it is not just saying, hey, we still have a chance if we kick it. The coaching part of it is saying, well, even though we've picked this guy up 3 times, he's Tom Brady. He's not nervous. Those 3 interceptions aren't going to make him nervous about coming out here and icing this game. So, I think LaFleur is going to be, Kyle Shanahan's a great coach, and he's going to be for the rest of his life attached to a horrible second half in Atlanta that cost the Falcons the Super Bowl in one of the worst, and arguably the worst collapse in NFL history.
It's true.
And I think LaFleur is going to be tied to this until he wins one too. This is a decision that's going to haunt him for a while.
Yeah, no doubt about that. No doubt about that. You kind of, especially at home, you think he'd be going for the throat there. But I totally agree. It's something that he's going to have to get over and probably won't until LaFleur and Rodgers win a Super Bowl together there, if they ever do. But it's just crazy what happened in that game. Just like we said, Brady had the up and down game, but I mean, now Tom Brady is he's going to be the oldest player to ever play in the Super Bowl, which he's just going to keep knocking down these records and etching his name to the record book even more so than we even thought. He's joining Peyton Manning, Kurt Warner, and Craig Morton as the only quarterback to start a Super Bowl for multiple teams. So it is just crazy to me. And then on the other side, as we got going on right now, coming out of halftime, the Bills and the Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs, looking for a repeat, or at least to get to their second straight. What are your feelings coming into this game? I really thought that the Bills would have a good showing. I didn't think they were going to win, but hey, they're hanging in there. They're within 9 points of the best team in the league, and they definitely have a fighter's chance in the second half.
Yeah. I thought the Bills were going to win this game. I thought they had what it took offensively to hang with the Chiefs, and I wasn't sure that Mahomes would be healthy enough to be the Pat Mahomes we know. I think, Josh Allen looked a little shell-shocked coming off the field at the end of the first half here. I mean, their only touchdown offensively came off the muffed punt from Kansas City that gave them the ball inside the 5. I think Kansas City's been able to hold them at bay and move the ball and get some big chunk plays. Kelsey's been killing them, obviously one of the better players in the league. You're seeing in these games, too. I mean, you look at Brady and the Bucs scoring 31 points and winning. I mean, you look at the Chiefs, they had 21 points early in the third quarter. They had almost 250 yards at the half. I mean, offense wins. The old saying of offense wins, defense wins championships, maybe that was the old adage, and maybe sometimes it does apply. You look at the Patriots a few years ago, shutting down the Rams, holding them to 3 points and a 13-3 win in the Super Bowl. So it's not like that can't happen that way. But we're looking at the playoffs right now. What we're seeing is that offense is ruling the day. And if you can't hang, if you're not ready to score 30 points on every given day, chances are that when you get into January playing this football deep into the season, you're not going to be able to hang with the big boys nowadays. And, covering the Giants and doing a little bit of Jets now and paying attention to a lot of New York football too, that's something I think about a lot watching these games. I mean, I was just looking. The Chiefs had almost 2,000 more yards this season than the Giants.
Wow.
And it might be a full 2,000 yards than the Jets, who were the worst offense in the league yardage-wise and scoring-wise. And, you look at a stat like that, and if you're the Giants and the Jets, whatever, and you say to yourself, well, we have a different game plan for how we want to win games. Well, you're playing in the same league as these teams who are able to accomplish that type of offensive firepower. And so you should strive for that too. And so that's something I have in the back of my mind watching all these games too is, what are the Giants and the Jets trying to become and how far are they away from it and what pieces do they need to get there?
That's a very good point. And actually, I was going to save this for a little bit later, but if, since you brought it up, the Jets right now, obviously they're in a transition. They hired the new coach, Robert Saleh. It's been widely, applauded around the league. I think he really hit a home run in his press conference. Now, there are a lot of rumors going around in the last few days that Deshaun Watson wants to get traded, and apparently the Jets are one of the teams at the top of his list. Do you think that the Texans have the guts to trade Deshaun Watson, and I guess the appetite for dead cap? And do you think that the Jets have the ability to pull something off like that?
Well, I don't think Nick Caserio, the Texans GM, wants to trade Deshaun Watson. I mean, he's a smart football guy. He knows a great player when he sees one. And, I don't think he wants to trade Deshaun Watson. There's no doubt about that. But, Watson clearly does not want to play there anymore, and it goes above Caserio. He doesn't trust the owner. He doesn't trust people that the owner trusts, including Jack Easterby. And it seems like it's beyond repair from a relationship standpoint. So, the idea that he wants to play for the Jets, I don't know for certain that he definitely does over the Dolphins. I know there were some reports disputing that Miami Herald report. I believe Matt Miller reported that, several people he had talked to said that wasn't actually the case. There's a good chance here that a lot of these leaks are designed to drive the price up and create some leverage in these trades. If the Texans know that their best trade would be with the Dolphins, for example, maybe you create some in-division competition with a team that also has priority assets and a high draft pick that could actually be legitimate competition if Watson were willing to waive his no trade. So him having a no trade clause is a big deal here. Florida, of course, no state income tax. That's a major deal. That's a huge attraction for players wanting to go play down in Florida at a team like Miami. And the Dolphins, remember, if you're Deshaun Watson, if you come to the Jets, yeah, you'll make the team better, but there's no guarantee that you're going to compete for anything anytime soon as a team when you're talking about Super Bowls and playoff runs. But if you go to Miami, you saw a Dolphins team this year that suddenly, 1 year after tanking, suddenly was very close to a playoff berth and looked like a quarterback away from a playoff berth And if they get in, they have two top corners. They have a good coaching staff, a creative coaching staff. They could make noise. So I think Miami still is the most likely destination for him. I also don't think Tua is the guy, even though the Dolphins are saying he is. So, I think we're going to see Deshaun Watson traded. But obviously what adds to that whole drama is that now he's the best quarterback who's available, but he's not the only quarterback who's available who is talented. So you talk about Matt Stafford, maybe Carson Wentz, even though it looks like the Eagles are trying to run it back. Sam Darnold is not a total lost cause, and is still young, and someone might want to take a chance. And some of these guys all of those guys are going to come a lot cheaper than Deshaun Watson. So how will that market affect where he goes? Ultimately, if you ask me how that's going to play out, I think he ends up with the Dolphins. But to play devil's advocate with the Jets, Woody Johnson coming back into the fold to me is huge. You have a guy who hasn't been running the team the last 4 years, but now that he's back running the show, this is the guy who made the Brett Favre trade, who made the Tim Tebow trade. He likes big names. He likes splashy headlines. He likes big name quarterbacks. He knows that the quarterback drives the league. And so, I wonder if there's any chance that's going to happen, even if Joe Douglas, Christopher Johnson, and Robert Saleh aren't necessarily saying, hey, let's mortgage a bunch of picks in the future for this one great player. I wonder if Woody being back turns out to be the deciding factor that forces a trade in that regard, because he really does have a history of making deals like that to really kind of spice things up and accelerate the timeline with his organization.
I totally agree with you that the Woody factor is the biggest factor here from the Jets standpoint. And but if we're just going to assume that, let's say that for whatever reason the Jets don't get Deshaun Watson, say he stays in Texans or he goes to Miami, do you think that the Jets, if they're in this position, they could really go three routes? Just like you said, Matt Stafford is available. Do you think they trade for him? Do you think they stick with Sam Darnold, or maybe go and take that second overall pick and draft one of the available quarterbacks out there?
Personally, I think if Watson's willing to play here, I think, especially with Woody in the fold, that's a major consideration. Mm-hmm. And it's something that you have to try to make happen while still saying, hey, can we still continue to build this roster into a talented and deep roster for the future if we make this deal? I think that has to be your number one priority if it's something he would like. Mm-hmm. I will say this, coming out of that press conference, I know that there's reports that Saleh and the new staff and Douglas, that they see, some untapped potential in Darnold. But there were early rumors that Douglas and the Jets might make a big trade and trade Darnold out of town. And coming out of that press conference, if we're just taking Saleh at his word, he did say that there were a lot of high opinions in the building of Darnold, but he would not even commit at this time to Darnold being his starting quarterback. And I thought that spoke volumes. It's not him saying that he thinks he's a bad player, but he definitely didn't endorse him as his guy. And this is something that matters in the NFL too. Just like it matters, if a coach isn't a GM's coach, it matters if a quarterback isn't a GM and a coach's quarterback. Coaches and QBs and GMs come in, and sometimes and oftentimes actually, they have different opinions of players that the previous regime drafted. And so Darnold's deep enough into his career now where it would not be a shock at all if Joe Douglas, who didn't draft him, and Robert Saleh, who didn't draft him, went and drafted a Zach Wilson or a Justin Fields at number 2, or tried to swing a deal for Deshaun Watson. I think you're looking at, you have Trey Lance, Fields, and Wilson. I think whoever the Jets think is the best player in that group is the clear option at 2, unless they make a trade for Watson. But I definitely think either way, they're looking to replace Darnold as the guy, or at least bring in somebody who's going to compete with him and eventually take over, unless Darnold would have fended off. But, it would not shock me at all if Darnold was on another team and they drafted a kid at number 2.
That's a great point, actually, about how Douglas and Salah both really had nothing to do with Darnold being here. And then even if you want to take that a step further, Woody Johnson wasn't even here when they picked Sam Darnold. So it could be that all of Sam's biggest supporters are, out of house right now, which could be a couple of factors, going against him in his Jets career. But to look at the other side of town, what are your thoughts about the Giants coming out of this year? I think it was a good step forward for them. I think Joe Judge showed that, especially after that 1-7 start, that he kept the locker room together. He kept the guys working for him. They were alive until the last day of the season. What are your thoughts on the step forwards that the Giants took this year under Joe Judge?
Yeah, I mean, I think Judge showed a lot of encouraging things. I mean, I think he got players to buy into a defined program. I think what you see is what you get with Judge. He was a hard-nosed coach. He was hard on the players and on the team, but everybody knew what was expected. There were no surprises, no change-ups, and I think guys bought in. And the positive is that you saw the team really bounce back from that horrible start and win those 4 straight games. That said, I think it only matters. And, I should say too, they made some really good acquisitions in the offseason. Bradbury, Martinez, Leonard Williams stepped up, had a big year. So those things are encouraging. And what Pat Graham did with the defense, Logan Ryan was a good addition. That said, it's only good if you build on it because, they still only won 6 games. I think people would have a much different taste in their mouths about the season if they were playing in any other division because it was a little bit of fool's gold thinking that they were still relevant because they were in the NFC East and they technically were. Mm-hmm. But if they were in any other division in football, they would have been out of it a long time prior to that. And the conversation would have been a lot different. So I don't think it's fair I don't think we should judge them. That's kind of like results-based analysis. It's more about, okay, what do we see from the Giants? Why were they losing? And how can they get better? And when I look at them, I see they still need a lot more talent, even though they added some more. And they also need to really improve the offensive side of the ball. And I'm not just talking about talent. I'm talking about Daniel Jones has to play better. I'm talking about we still don't technically know if Jason Garrett is back for year 2 as offensive coordinator. Is he coming back? Is he still possibly going to land somewhere else? There's still a lot of staffs in flux. If he does come back, can Daniel Jones be explosive in this offense? Do they have the chemistry and the wherewithal to make it work? Who is their O-line coach going to be? There's some uncertainty about Dave DeGuglielmo, and I know John Mara and the Giants are targeting playmakers on that side of the ball, but this is something I would add too. I know that they like Daniel Jones enough to give him a 3rd year, but when a guy throws 11 touchdown passes in an NFL season, and you tell me that he had a good year, it's hard for me to understand that. I watch him play a lot. He's got a lot of strong qualities. He showed with his mobility and his legs that he can make plays. There are certainly enough qualities in Daniel Jones that show he might be the guy, but he definitely didn't show he was, even if he didn't show he absolutely isn't. And I guess my feeling is this. Maybe they wouldn't make the trade. Maybe Watson wouldn't want to play there. But I think it's insane that when people throw out, a list of 12, 13, 14, 15 teams that might trade for Deshaun Watson, that the Giants aren't put on the list. Now, I know they have the 11th pick. They don't have the 2nd pick like the Jets. They don't have a top 5 pick like the Dolphins. So obviously maybe the package that they ship there wouldn't be as strong. But they're a team that if they got Deshaun Watson, their quarterback position would go from so-so to great. So I find it strange that there's not as much talk about that as a possibility. I don't know if the Giants have made that call or not. I don't know if Watson would want to come here or not. Because just like the Jets, the Giants are a team that is a long way away. But I guess that's my feeling there. I guess that was a long-winded answer, but I guess my short answer to your question is there was some good that the Giants showed, but they're still far away. And I find it interesting John Mara expects like a lot more wins and, probably a playoff berth next season because this team still has a long way to go. I mean, they're still rebuilding. They're not close. That's my feeling.
That's very true. And that's a very good point about the Giants too. And just like you said, they're still not, really that close to winning, but they're definitely closer than the Jets. And well, at least in my opinion. And if you put Watson on this team, they might not be, a top 5 team in the league, maybe not even a top 10 team in the league, but they'd be much closer to being on track to being an elite team again if you put Deshaun Watson there instead of Daniel Jones. And I don't have anything against Daniel Jones, but I mean, Watson's just that much of a difference maker.
Yeah, no, I think like the conversation would change about how many weapons they need. I mean, you know, you would see if Watson were the Giants quarterback this year instead of Daniel Jones, there wouldn't be as many complaints about their lack of weapons because he would have used the weapons better.
Yeah.
Now, he's just a better player.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as far as who's further ahead, the Jets or the Giants, I mean, obviously the Giants defense took a huge step forward this year in how they were, in the talent that they added and then what Pat Graham was able to do with that talent. But, you know, their lack of offense, and also they need to add more personnel on that side of the ball so they can play D the way they want to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they and the Jets are both there at the bottom of the table when you're talking about offensive production. And, you know, I think the Giants are using some numbers at the end of the year to make things look a little rosier than they really are. You know, you can say, you could say that they won a certain amount of games down the stretch. You know, they went 1-3 in December. You know, so going 1-3 in December, but then stretching back to November when they were 3-1 and finding a way to say that you won, what was it, 5 of the last time? I can't even remember now, but I'm not looking at it. But, I think that the Giants math is affording them a way to look at this a little bit rosier than maybe they should. You know, I guess the bottom line is this. I think that the Giants in these years, I've covered them, I think 5 years now. I think they were better this year at self-evaluating and knowing what was good and what wasn't, so where they need to get better, what's not good enough. And, you know, they need to continue on that route. If they can continue to be honest about what's good and what isn't, then they'll continue to get better. But if they start telling themselves that players who aren't good enough are, then they're going to find themselves back where they were before.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And, you know, just to finish up on the Giants, though, I just want to ask you, you know, Dave Gettleman gets a lot of flack from Giants fans, and some of it's rightfully so. And, you know, he really doesn't get a lot of credit for, like you mentioned, picking up guys like Bradbury and Martinez this offseason that really helped take that defense to that next level you were talking about. And so my question is, especially with Mara, you know, what he was saying, how, you know, maybe even expecting a playoff berth next year. Do they have to make the playoffs next year for Gettleman to stick around? Or do you think that, you know, he's going to be given a little bit more leeway than that?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I mean, you probably know my history, but I've been very critical of Gettleman, and, you know, I will continue to be. Frankly, after he kept his job last year and this year, I don't know what would get him fired. You know, I mean, I think that you could rationalize keeping anyone if you said, hey, well, we'll give him 10 years and see if we can get to the playoffs. I mean, you know, he came in and made things worse. He traded their number one receiver. Now they need one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, signed Golden Tate, Alec Ogletree, Nate Solder, drafted Saquon. You know, I'm watching Josh Allen playing the AFC Championship game right now, you know, on and on. I'm not going to re-litigate it all, but you're right. I mean, certainly he was also a part of some really good signings this offseason. I think once Joe Judge got in the building, and this year's approach to free agency seemed to clearly yield better results than in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we don't know all the exact inner workings of how that happened, but definitely capped off by, you know, we do know that Judge's presence was a huge draw for Logan Ryan. You know, even though Dave Gettleman's the GM, I mean, that was basically a player who knew Joe Judge and felt comfortable, and that hiring that coach who then brought this player in. So I think the coach seems to deserve credit for that signing, or at least partial credit. You know, I think if the Giants don't not only, you know, have a winning record, you know, playoffs, yes, I mean, I think Gettleman should have to make the playoffs. I do think this is headed towards some sort of transition. I don't know if it would be internal with Kevin Abrams or whether it'd be external with somebody that they would match up with Judge. But I just found it very interesting that Judge and Rule were both hired at the same time in Carolina and New York. And so Matt Rule gets hired, and 1 year into his tenure, of a rebuild. You know, they fire the old GM, they hire Scott Fitterer, and now they're kind of pairing a GM with a coach that they hope is going to be a long-term pairing. But the Giants went another route. They hired the young coach. They start the rebuild that should have started years ago. But then instead of firing the GM and kind of marrying the coach to a new GM and going forward from there, they've retained that former GM who was a part of a lot of those mistakes in the past. And, you know, I find those two situations very interesting to compare as we go ahead into 2021 because they looked like two very similar situations. And of course, Rule was the guy that the Giants were targeting in that previous hiring cycle. But now they're going about it two very different ways from a personnel and a general manager standpoint. And I'm just curious to see how it works out, how those relationships and those dynamics work out differently in New York and Carolina, and which one yields more consistency and results.
Yeah, very, very true. There's a lot of similarities between the two. And, you know, only time will tell where we stand with those two and who ended up getting the better end of the deal. Because, you know, there's definitely a lot of parallels there. But, you know, Pat, I want to thank you for taking the time here. I'm running low on time. But before I get you out of here, I just want to ask you, do you think that the Chiefs hold on tonight, or are you expecting a Bills comeback? And what do you think about the Super Bowl?
Oh, good question. You know, I think watching this game, the Chiefs look like they're too much offensively. I mean, I picked the Bills to win the game. I still think they can do it, so I'll stick with it. But so far, the Chiefs have looked like a team that's been here before, and the Bills look like a team that are feeling it out. That doesn't mean they won't get it done, but you know, they still haven't scored a touchdown that wasn't on a short field. So at this point, it looks like the Chiefs are going to hold on. And then, you know, in the Super Bowl, listen, I think the Bucs have a lot of good things going for them. Good to see Jason Pierre-Paul, by the way, back in the Super Bowl. But, you know, I think that the Chiefs have a better team, a better offense. They're so explosive. You know, I mean, if Dee Ford doesn't jump off sides a couple years ago in the AFC title game, you know, Mahomes and the Chiefs are in 3 straight Super Bowls.
That's a good point.
So, you know, I think we could be looking at a repeat. And I think if Mahomes and the Chiefs repeat, it would be the first repeat since Brady's Patriots in 2003 and 2004, I think.
Absolutely, you're right.